The small alien scouting ship touched down with a soft hum, sinking slightly into the lavender-colored soil of the distant planet. Its smooth metallic surface reflected the soft glow of the twin suns hanging in the pale blue sky. Inside the ship, the crew of tall, graceful beings, slender limbs, pale iridescent skin, and eyes large and thoughtful, watched silently. Their mission was simple: observe the humans who had arrived on this remote colony and report back. But the simplicity of the task had been hiding a complexity none of them could yet understand. Outside, the human settlement looked modest but alive. Simple buildings, rounded and efficient, spread across the gentle hills. Humans moved among them with a curious mix of energy and calm. Some carried supplies, others tended small gardens of green that seemed almost impossible in this dry land. From the ship, the humans appeared unarmed, unaware, and strangely comfortable in their surroundings. One of the youngest of the alien crew, a child of about 7 by their species' standards, crept closer to the landing area. Her long, pale fingers brushed over the alien grass as she walked, careful not to make a sound. She was fascinated by the humans, though a strange instinct made her wary. She had been taught to fear anything unknown, and yet curiosity pulled her forward. She could see one human standing alone near the edge of the settlement, observing the horizon. The human was tall, broad-shouldered, with hair the color of burnished copper. The alien child had never seen anything like him. The human turned toward her, sensing her gaze. He smiled, a gentle and open smile that carried no threat. His hands were empty, raised slightly in a gesture of peace. The alien child froze. Something inside her stirred, a mix of fear and awe, but also recognition. She wanted to run, to hide, but she could not look away. Slowly, she turned on her heels and bolted toward her mother, who was standing with a small group of other adults near the edge of the alien encampment. She shouted in her soft, high voice, "That's the human." "What do you mean, little one?" she asked, though her tone was calm, almost detached. She's different. I felt it. That's the human." The child's words came out in bursts, urgent and trembling. Other adults turned to glance at the human, seeing nothing remarkable at first. But the child's insistence carried weight. In their culture, children were seldom wrong about instinctive impressions. The human noticed the sudden movement of the alien child and lifted a hand in greeting. His expression remained patient, kind. He made no sudden gestures, no noise meant to intimidate. He simply stood there, his eyes soft but attentive. The adults exchanged looks. The human had done nothing threatening, yet the child's reaction had been immediate and strong. Something about him, his presence, his way of being, had registered in the child's mind as significant. One of the older aliens, a scientist of the observation crew, muttered to his companion, "The child senses something unusual. Perhaps it is in their behavior." The child watched from behind her mother, peeking out between slender fingers. She was drawn to the human despite her initial fear. She saw him crouch slightly, then reach down to pick up a small rock, examining it carefully before setting it back down. His curiosity was immediate, honest, and unhidden. The child's wide eyes reflected wonder. In that simple gesture, she felt a truth she could not explain. Humans noticed the world in a way aliens did not. They saw not only what was, but also what could be. The adults of the alien crew approached the human cautiously, stepping lightly over the uneven ground. Their long limbs moved with grace and precision, their heads tilted in a careful study. The human did not flinch or step back. He continued observing the landscape, occasionally glancing at the approaching aliens. When he finally spoke, his voice was calm, even, and welcoming. "Hello," he said, simple, one word but full of meaning. The scientist among the aliens stepped forward. "You are human," he said, his tone more statement than question. He studied the human carefully, noting his posture, the ease of his movements, the openness in his expression. "Yes," the human replied, "and I am pleased to meet you." Humans, perhaps they are more than they seem. The humans, at least this one, carried an energy that was difficult to explain. It was not fear, aggression, or dominance. It was recognition, like he belonged to a story she had not yet been told but somehow already knew. I'm Lyra," she whispered. Her mother's hand rested lightly on her shoulder, guiding but not forcing. "Lyra," Mark said, smiling again. "It's a wonderful name. Thank you for letting me meet you." He did not reach to touch her, respecting the invisible boundary, yet his presence was comforting. Lyra felt safe, yet alive, as if the world had shifted just slightly when he spoke. The other adults of the alien crew were observing silently. One of them, a commander with pale blue skin and eyes that seemed to hold the depth of oceans, spoke softly to the scientist. What is it about this human that the child recognizes? She is not afraid in the normal sense. She is alert, curious, respectful yet cautious, and she is not alone in this. Watch him. He draws attention without seeking it. There is something extraordinary here. It was unlike that of any human they had encountered through recordings or reports. There was no fear, no impatience. There was respect, a willingness to learn, and an ease in presence that the aliens found hard to quantify. Lyra edged closer to her mother, still watching Mark. She felt a strange urge to speak, to say something about the human, but the words did not come. Instead, she simply observed. Every small motion he made seemed significant. Every gesture carried meaning. The child began to understand, without knowing how, that humans were not easily classified. They were unpredictable in ways that could not be calculated, yet reliable in ways that mattered. Mark noticed her attention. "You like to watch, don't you?" he said softly. Lyra nodded almost imperceptibly. He smiled again and straightened. "Well, I'll try to be interesting then." He knelt down once more, his eyes gentle. "Would you like to show me your world, just a little?" The other adults exchanged glances. There was a decision forming, one that had never been necessary before, to allow humans to integrate even slightly into their observation. For the first time, the aliens truly saw him, not just as a visitor or a subject or a human, but as a being that defied their understanding. Mark reached out a hand, not to touch, but in gesture, a simple offer of trust. Lyra's small hand hovered near his, then she stepped back slightly, uncertain. Yet there was no fear now, only fascination. The twin suns dipped slightly lower in the sky, casting long shadows across the alien settlement. The human and the child faced each other, separated by a short distance, yet connected by something intangible. The adults watched, silent but attentive. In the quiet, the scientist whispered, "Perhaps this is what we have been missing. Humans are something else entirely, and this child has recognized it first." Mark smiled, sensing that he had made a small but meaningful connection. He would have to learn their ways, their language, their culture, but for now, he had achieved something far more important. He had shown that humans could be understood, even if only in the smallest ways, by those who were willing to watch and listen. The alien crew remained quiet, processing what they had just witnessed. A human, ordinary in appearance, extraordinary in presence, stood at the edge of their settlement, bridging worlds without trying, inspiring attention without seeking it. The young child, Lyra, had recognized it immediately, and in doing so had opened a door the aliens had not yet imagined. As the sun dipped below the horizon, Mark and Lyra stood facing each other, two species separated by everything yet connected by curiosity, courage, and the quiet understanding that sometimes the simplest gesture, just being, could change everything. And somewhere deep in her mind, Lyra knew that this was only the beginning. The human had arrived, and with him came a force the aliens could not yet measure, a force that would challenge everything they thought they knew about life, about intelligence, and about the power of being human. The next morning, the twin suns rose slowly over the lavender fields, casting soft golden light across the alien settlement. The air was crisp, carrying the scent of alien flora that seemed almost musical in its sweetness. Lyra awoke early, her small frame stretching in the cool morning. She could not stop thinking about the human, Mark. Something about him had left a mark on her mind. She could not explain it to her mother or the adults, but she knew one thing clearly: he was different. Outside, Mark moved among the human colony with ease, carrying supplies, speaking quietly to other humans, and offering guidance where it was needed. He observed, yes, but he also acted. Each gesture was precise yet natural, and every decision seemed driven not by strict logic or calculations, but by instinct and care. Lyra watched him from a safe distance, hiding behind a small cluster of alien shrubs. She wanted to follow, to interact, yet a tiny part of her still felt the old fear. Mark noticed her glance from afar. He waved gently, and Lyra's heart skipped. She ducked behind the shrubs, peeking cautiously. The adults nearby, the scientists and commanders, observed this with a mix of curiosity and skepticism. "The child is fascinated," one whispered to another. "She cannot explain why, but she is drawn to him. Humans, they inspire attention differently." Lyra noticed that even their work, which was precise and perfect, lacked something Mark brought effortlessly: human connection. When Mark passed through a section of the colony, he noticed a small alien creature trapped under a fallen branch. Without hesitation, he lifted the branch, freed it, and spoke to it softly, though it did not understand words. Lyra watched, wide-eyed. The adults noticed too, but they said nothing. They were silent, studying this interaction. Later, Mark approached a group of aliens who were attempting to move a heavy container. Instead of instructing or commanding, he joined them, offering steady strength and encouragement. "Let's do this together," he said simply. His tone was calm but motivating. Slowly, the aliens began to move in sync with him. They had the strength, the intelligence, the skills, but not the instinctive way to inspire teamwork that humans possessed naturally. Lyra edged closer, barely daring to breathe. She tried to mimic his expressions, tilting her head, smiling as he did, feeling an unfamiliar warmth spread through her. Her mother noticed her subtle movements but did not intervene. She seemed to understand that the child was learning in a way that could not be explained. By afternoon, the aliens had gathered to analyze Mark's behavior. They discussed quietly among themselves, their voices soft and melodic, like wind through crystal. "He is unpredictable," the scientist said, "and yet his actions produce results far beyond our calculations. It is remarkable. This is something our species does not possess." He worked patiently, yet without hesitation. The water began to flow more freely, and the children's faces lit up in relief. One of the adult aliens approached Mark cautiously. "You are solving this in a way we would not consider. How did you know?" "See what the world needs, then act." She approached Mark quietly, moving slowly until she stood a few steps away. "Why do you do that?" she asked, her small voice trembling. Mark knelt, bringing his eyes to hers. "Do what?" he asked, gentle and calm. "Help everything, even things that are not yours," she whispered. Mark smiled. "Because it matters, because it is the right thing. Because helping makes the world better for everyone, not just me." One murmured, "This child sees clearly. She recognizes the truth of humans before we do. That is significant." Lyra approached slowly and sat a short distance away, unsure if she should speak more. "Why do you smile at everything?" she asked after a moment. Mark chuckled softly. "I don't smile at everything. I smile at the things that matter to me. Moments, people, kindness. Life is short. Smiles make it better." Her species rarely smiled unless instructed or necessary. But here was a human, different in every way, smiling naturally, for no reason other than the joy of it. She felt a tug in her chest she could not name. In the days that followed, Mark continued to move among the aliens, quietly observing, learning, and acting when needed. He carried no weapons, no tools beyond simple devices to assist humans in daily life. Yet his influence grew. Aliens began to cooperate more, solve problems creatively, and even share small acts of kindness, inspired by his example. Lyra began following him more closely, mimicking his movements, learning from his gestures. She laughed when he laughed, frowned when he frowned, and sometimes even spoke softly to him, though she could not yet form complete sentences in his language. The bond was small, tentative, but undeniable. One afternoon, a small fire broke out in one of the alien storage units. The adults were calculating risk and protocol, unsure how to act quickly. Mark sprang into action, guiding a line of water from nearby sources and directing the aliens calmly. Within minutes, the fire was under control. The aliens were stunned. Their systems of logic and calculation had predicted failure, yet humans had succeeded with simple courage and intuition. The scientist whispered to the commander, "This human, he operates on principles we cannot fully predict. His decisions are fluid yet effective. Perhaps he is teaching us without intending to." Lyra spoke softly. "Do humans always help like this?" They could inspire courage where none existed. They could see connections and possibilities that others ignored. The aliens continued to watch silently from a distance. Their reports were growing more complex, filled with observations they could not yet fully explain. Humans were extraordinary, not because of strength, speed, or intelligence alone, but because of something else. Something deeper, something that could not be measured by any formula. Lyra realized, finally, why she had run to her mother the first time she saw Mark. It was recognition. Instinctive, undeniable recognition of a force she could not yet name. Humans were not just another species. They were different. And this human, Mark, had shown her a glimpse of why. By the end of the second week, small changes had begun to ripple through the settlement. Alien children smiled more freely, adults paused to observe rather than calculate, and small acts of cooperation appeared where none had before. Lyra stood at the edge of her observation, pride shining in her eyes. She had seen it first, understood it first, and now she watched as humans began to leave their mark, not through conquest or power, but through presence, empathy, and courage. And Mark, he remained unaware of the full effect he had caused. He continued moving quietly among the aliens, acting naturally, teaching without words and inspiring without intention. For Lyra, this was the beginning of something profound. For the aliens, it was the first true challenge to everything they believed they knew about intelligence, civilization, and life itself. And in the quiet of the alien night, as the twin moons reflected off the lavender fields, Lyra whispered softly to herself, "Humans, they are more than we imagined. And he is the beginning." And Lyra would be there, watching, learning, and carrying the first truth, that humans, even one human, could inspire a world. The lavender fields swayed gently in the wind, but the peace of the alien settlement was about to be tested. Clouds gathered unnaturally over the horizon, dark and rolling, far heavier than the twin suns usually allowed. The aliens, attuned to every natural shift, paused in their work. There had been storms before, of course, but this felt different. The adults whispered among themselves, analyzing data, consulting instruments, and debating the safest way to prepare. Lyra, watching from behind a low ridge, felt a knot of worry twist in her stomach. She had seen humans face challenges before, but something told her that this storm would test more than just survival. It would test courage, quick thinking, and unity. She glanced toward Mark, who was walking calmly among the humans, checking the habitats, ensuring everything was secure. Calm, focused, ready. The first blast of wind hit as a sharp gust, scattering small debris across the lavender fields. The aliens moved to shelter, their long limbs working in precise coordination to protect equipment and themselves. The humans, however, did not panic. They moved with purpose, shouting instructions and assisting each other. Lyra noticed the subtle difference immediately. While the aliens reacted according to protocol and caution, the humans acted according to instinct, empathy, and courage. A deep rumble shook the ground. The storm was more powerful than predicted. A small cliffside near the settlement began to crumble, sending rocks and soil tumbling toward a section of the human habitat. The aliens froze, unsure how to respond quickly. Their systems depended on careful calculations, simulations, and caution. But the humans, Mark, and the others did not hesitate. Mark ran toward the collapsing cliff, shouting instructions to the humans nearby. "Move the children, clear the gardens, secure the containers." His voice carried authority, yet it was calm and encouraging. Lyra's eyes widened. She had seen humans work together before, but this was different. This was instinct combined with courage, applied instantly in a life-or-death moment. The alien scientists rushed to assist, but their movements were cautious, slower than the humans. Mark noticed their hesitation and gestured clearly, "Help here." "Don't wait, act now." The aliens, surprised by the directness of his command, followed, and together they began to lift heavy debris and reinforce barriers. Lyra stayed close to her mother, peeking between the lavender stalks. Her small hand clutched her mother's arm as she watched Mark coordinate both humans and aliens. He was not commanding like an officer or calculating like a scientist. He was inspiring action. The aliens responded not just to orders, but to trust, encouragement, and presence. A child's cry rang out. One of the younger humans had been trapped under a fallen beam in the gardens. Mark was there in an instant, lifting the beam carefully, supporting the child and checking for injuries. The aliens watched, stunned. The speed, care, and courage he displayed were unlike anything their protocols could anticipate. Lyra's heart raced. She understood now why the humans had been underestimated. The storm intensified. Wind tore through the settlement, and rain began to fall in heavy sheets, mixing with the dust and soil. The aliens were struggling to maintain control. Equipment was slipping, barriers were failing, and the mathematical models that predicted disaster seemed useless in the chaos. Yet the humans, working together instinctively, began to stabilize key structures. Mark moved among them, directing, assisting, and lending his strength wherever it was needed. Lyra could hardly keep her eyes on him. Every small action seemed significant. Every choice he made, where to run, what to lift, how to calm a panicking person, was guided not by calculation, but by instinct, courage, and empathy. Humans, she realized, acted from something deeper than rules or logic. They acted from understanding, care, and a willingness to risk themselves for others. By nightfall, the storm had passed, leaving the settlement battered but intact. The humans had worked tirelessly, alongside a hesitant alien crew, ensuring safety and minimizing damage. The aliens began to grasp the true extent of what they had witnessed. This was not mere luck or strength, it was something innate in humans. It was leadership, courage, and adaptability, combined in a way that their species could not replicate. The scientist approached Mark quietly as he checked the remaining structures. Your methods, they are unusual, unpredictable, yet effective. Why? Sometimes the best solution isn't calculated. It's done from what we know is right. Lyra's mother knelt beside her daughter, brushing mud from her hair. She sees it clearly, she said softly. She knows what we do not yet understand. Humans are extraordinary. Lyra nodded, her eyes still fixed on Mark, who was helping a human elder carry supplies to a safer area. In the following days, the aliens continued to study the humans' methods during the storm. They observed how humans communicated without rigid hierarchy, how they improvised solutions, and how small acts of courage inspired others to take initiative. Lyra followed closely, noting how Mark encouraged not only humans but also aliens, showing them how to cooperate instinctively rather than mechanically. One afternoon, as the alien crew assessed structural damage, a sudden landslide threatened a secondary storage area. The humans had begun repairing it, but the rocks were large, heavy, and unstable. The aliens paused, calculating the risks, debating methods, and measuring angles. Mark, however, stepped forward calmly. He signaled to several humans and aliens to form a line, carefully passing the rocks and debris to safer areas. Lyra's eyes widened. Each rock moved with purpose, each person's action coordinated without formal instruction. Mark's calm presence guided the process, ensuring safety and efficiency. The aliens, trained in precision and caution, were amazed. What they had expected to be chaos had become order, human order. When the task was complete, the adults of the alien crew gathered quietly. "This human," the commander said slowly, he acts in ways we cannot predict, yet the results are better than any calculated plan. He is remarkable. He acts without hesitation, and the child, she recognized this from the beginning. They were unpredictable, yes, but that unpredictability was a strength, a force that could unite, protect, and create in ways no alien formula could replicate. That evening after the storm, Mark walked through the settlement, checking on both humans and aliens, offering help and guidance where needed. Lyra followed, keeping a careful distance but always watching. At one point, she saw a group of alien children struggling to lift a heavy container. Mark knelt beside them, showing them how to use leverage and teamwork, laughing softly when one of the children grunted with effort. Lyra smiled. Humans laughed and inspired joy even in danger. Later, as the suns dipped below the horizon, casting a soft golden glow over the lavender fields, Lyra approached Mark hesitantly. Why do you help them?" she asked quietly. "Even aliens." "And because helping others is what makes us human." Their work, once rigid and methodical, began to include small acts of cooperation inspired by the humans. Their calculations and plans were supplemented with improvisation, and a sense of shared purpose emerged. Lyra noticed it first. The humans had taught, without intending to, a lesson the aliens could not learn from books, simulations, or observation alone. One morning, as the settlement repaired the final damage from the storm, the scientist pulled the commander aside. "We have underestimated humans," he said quietly. "Not in strength, not in intelligence, but in their ability to act, to inspire, to lead without authority. They are extraordinary." Lyra recognized something we could not quantify. Perhaps this is the first time our species will truly understand humans, not by studying them, but by watching, learning, and experiencing them. And he is teaching us, even without trying. And as the twin moons rose high over the lavender fields, the aliens realized something profound. Humans were not just a species to observe. They were a force, a spark, and perhaps even a guide. Their courage, ingenuity, and empathy had changed the settlement, inspired Lyra, and unsettled even the most logical minds among the aliens. The storm had passed. The world had survived. But the lesson remained clear. Humans, in their unpredictable, instinctive, courageous way, were unlike anything the aliens had known. And this was only the beginning. Lyra watched the humans and aliens working together, her small mind filled with understanding and anticipation. She had seen it from the start. Humans were more than strong or intelligent. They were a source of inspiration, a bridge between species, and a reminder that courage and compassion could change everything. And for the first time, the aliens admitted it to themselves. They were learning from humans. The morning air was crisp and still, the lavender fields shimmering under the light of the twin suns. Lyra woke early, her small form moving quietly through the settlement, careful not to wake her mother. The storm had passed days ago, but the atmosphere still felt tense. The aliens were uneasy, aware that nature was unpredictable, and they had learned that humans did not act like any other species they had known. Lyra's eyes immediately found Mark, who was already moving among the humans, inspecting the buildings and gardens. His calm and purposeful movements drew attention naturally. Today was different. The humans had detected a new problem, a fissure forming near the edge of the settlement, a deep crack in the lavender-streaked soil. It had begun subtly, almost unnoticed, but now it threatened the structural support of several human habitats. The aliens had noticed too, their instruments beeping and recording measurements, but their methods were slow and cautious. They preferred observation and calculation before action. Humans did not. Mark crouched near the fissure, examining the soil and rock formations with a careful eye. He called out to nearby humans, explaining what needed to be done, pointing toward stable ground and giving simple instructions. Move the containers back, reinforce the edges with boards and stones, keep children away from the edge. His voice was calm but carried authority. It was not commanding, it was guiding, teaching, and inspiring. Lyra watched from behind a low mound, her heart pounding. She had learned that humans could remain calm under pressure, but this was something more. Mark seemed to anticipate problems before they happened, guiding the humans instinctively. The aliens, observing from a safe distance, were astonished. Their species relied on careful measurement and calculation, yet humans relied on something deeper: intuition, courage, and trust in each other. As Mark directed the humans, a sudden tremor shook the ground. Dust and small rocks tumbled into the fissure, sending a cloud of debris into the air. The humans scattered briefly, but Mark remained composed. He ran to the edge, signaling to a group of humans to form a human chain, passing stones and boards to stabilize the collapsing soil. Lyra gasped. She had never seen such quick thinking and coordination, especially under such danger. The alien scientists approached cautiously, observing the human chain. One whispered to another, "Notice how he inspires action. They act not because they are told, but because they want to. They understand the stakes instinctively. There is no protocol, no calculated plan, it should fail." The aliens froze, startled by the instinctive bravery. Lyra's eyes filled with awe. Humans did not wait to calculate risk, they acted immediately, guided by instinct and care. Once the immediate danger had passed, Mark turned to the adults of the alien crew. "We need more support over here," he said calmly. "We can stabilize this, but we must act together. Everyone has a role." Something in Mark's gaze, his calm authority, and the certainty of his actions persuaded the aliens to act. Slowly, they moved forward, joining the human effort. Lyra ran beside them, helping in small ways, carrying stones and boards as directed. She felt proud and connected, witnessing the humans' courage firsthand. For hours, humans and aliens worked together to reinforce the fissure. Mark coordinated effortlessly, assigning tasks, guiding the movement of heavy materials, and reassuring those who were frightened. Every step was careful yet decisive. The aliens were amazed at how natural his leadership seemed, how it drew cooperation and unity without formal orders or rules. By midday, the fissure had been stabilized enough to prevent further collapse. The humans cheered softly, while the aliens remained cautious but impressed. The child, Lyra, watched Mark stand near the repaired soil, wiping sweat from his brow but smiling gently at the people around him. One of the alien scientists approached him, still hesitant. "How do you decide what to do?" "You help those who need help. You protect those who cannot protect themselves. And you keep moving forward even when the outcome is uncertain. Sometimes courage, care, and quick thinking are enough." Mark helped a human elder repair a collapsed roof, guided alien children safely away from unstable ground, and coordinated supplies for families whose habitats had been threatened. Each act, though small in isolation, added up to a demonstration of instinct, bravery, and ingenuity that left the aliens stunned. Lyra followed closely, imitating Mark's calm and careful gestures. She carried small supplies, moved debris as instructed, and began speaking in soft tones to reassure others. Mark noticed her presence and smiled gently, giving her a nod of encouragement. She felt a warmth of pride and belonging unlike anything she had experienced before. By evening, the settlement was safe. The fissure had been reinforced, the habitats were secure, and humans and aliens alike were exhausted but unharmed. The aliens gathered together, observing Mark as he checked on the last remaining repairs. One scientist turned to the commander, whispering, "We have underestimated humans, not in power or knowledge, but in courage, intuition, and leadership. They are inspiring." Mark knelt beside her, bringing his eyes to hers. "Because it matters," he said simply. "Because others' lives are important. Because helping makes the world better for everyone, not just me." She began to understand that humans were unpredictable, but their unpredictability was a strength. They could act when others hesitated. They could inspire courage where none existed. They could make choices based on empathy rather than protocol, and their influence spread without force or demand. The aliens continued to watch from a distance, recording every detail, trying to understand what they had witnessed. Their calculations and predictions had failed during the storm and the Fisher crisis. Humans, they realized, could not be measured fully. Their value was not in strength, speed, or intelligence alone. It was in the ability to act with courage, inspire unity, and respond with intuition and care in ways no formula could predict. That night, the settlement was quiet. Humans gathered around small fires, speaking in soft tones, laughing and sharing food. Lyra sat near Mark, her small hands clasped in front of her. She felt a sense of understanding that went beyond words. Humans were more than strong or clever. They were a force of courage, empathy, and leadership. Mark looked at the settlement, then at the twin moons above. "We did well today," he said softly. "Everyone did their part, humans and aliens together. I saw how humans are different and strong and important." The aliens, too, were learning. Their observations were becoming more complex, filled with new respect and curiosity. They had seen humans act in crisis, not with fear or calculation, but with courage, care, and instinctive leadership. They realized that humans were not just another species to observe. They were a force that could transform situations, inspire others, and lead where logic alone could not. And as the twin moons reflected off the lavender fields, Lyra whispered to herself, "Humans, they are more than we imagined. And he is showing us how." The aliens were beginning to see humans not as subjects, but as partners, teachers, and examples of courage and ingenuity. And for Lyra, the lesson was clear. Humans could face the impossible, act with bravery, and inspire change simply by being themselves. It was a new beginning, for humans, for aliens, and for the bonds that were slowly forming across species. The days following the storm were calm but filled with quiet anticipation. The lavender fields swayed gently under the twin suns, but the air carried a tension that was different from fear. The aliens were no longer merely observers. They were students of humanity, watching every small act, every choice, and every moment of courage and empathy that the humans displayed. Lyra woke early, eager to follow Mark as he moved among the humans and aliens, guiding them, helping them, inspiring them. She had learned so much in the past days, yet something told her that the most important lesson was still to come. Mark moved with the same calm energy he always carried, checking the habitats, assisting humans with repairs, and quietly encouraging the alien children to help in small ways. He did not rush, yet everything he did was purposeful. Lyra noticed how naturally he inspired cooperation and trust. The aliens, who had always relied on strict rules and careful calculations, were beginning to see that humans had a different kind of power. It was not force, it was not intelligence alone. It was courage, care, and the ability to inspire action. That afternoon, an unexpected problem arose. A deep canyon nearby, created over centuries by shifting land, showed signs of collapsing toward the human settlement. The cracks had grown deeper than anyone had anticipated, and the threat was immediate. Alien instruments registered the instability, but their protocols called for evacuation and careful planning, not immediate action. Humans, however, saw what needed to be done, and Mark was already organizing efforts to reinforce the canyon edge before disaster could strike. He moved among both humans and aliens, assigning tasks in a calm but firm voice. "Reinforce the support here. Move the lighter containers back. Secure the children near safe zones. Keep your eyes on each other. We can do this if we work together." Lyra ran alongside them, carrying smaller pieces of wood, following instructions, and feeling a deep sense of pride. She had seen humans act under pressure before, but this time the stakes were higher, and the cooperation between species was more important than ever. A sudden tremor shook the ground as the canyon edge began to shift. Dust and rocks tumbled down into the gap, threatening the nearest human habitat. Mark's voice rang out calmly but urgently. "Move back, keep your balance, pass the stones quickly but carefully." They acted when others froze. Their courage was immediate, instinctive, and precise. The aliens, observing closely, could not replicate this combination of intuition and bravery in any calculation. Over the next several hours, Mark led humans and aliens in reinforcing the canyon edge. Every move was coordinated yet flexible, every action guided by awareness and care. The aliens were astonished at how effectively humans could solve problems in real time, adapting to shifting dangers without hesitation. Where the aliens had relied on protocol, the humans relied on courage, quick thinking, and trust in each other. Lyra saw the impact clearly. The humans' presence inspired confidence, not just in other humans, but in aliens as well. One alien child, previously fearful and hesitant, lifted a heavy stone under Mark's guidance, grinning with pride when it was placed correctly. An alien adult, still skeptical of humans, began adjusting barriers and reinforcing structures alongside a human neighbor, realizing that cooperation without protocol could achieve incredible results. When the canyon edge was finally stabilized, the humans and aliens took a moment to breathe. The damage was minimal thanks to the quick action and leadership of the humans. Lyra ran to Mark, her small hands gripping his arm. "We did it," she said softly, her eyes wide with amazement. Mark smiled down at her. "Yes, we did, together." Their calculations, predictions, and cautious protocols had been insufficient, but the humans' courage and coordination had ensured safety. The scientist approached Mark hesitantly and said, "You have done what our instruments and calculations could not. Why are humans so effective in crises?" "We see what needs to be done, and we do it even if it is dangerous. We help each other. That is what makes us human." "That is extraordinary." That evening, as the twin moons rose above the lavender fields, Mark and Lyra sat quietly near a safe zone. Humans and aliens alike were resting, recovering from the exhausting work of the day. Lyra turned to Mark. "Do humans always help like this?" she asked softly. Mark shook his head gently. "Not always, but many of us try, and we act when we see danger, when we see someone in need. Courage, empathy, and trust guide our actions. That is the way we survive and grow." Their unpredictability allowed them to adapt, to lead, and to make decisions that could not be calculated. The aliens began to speak among themselves, their tone filled with respect and reflection. "Humans are not just another species," the scientist said quietly. "They are a force, a guide. Their actions and courage challenge us to rethink what we know about intelligence, leadership, and cooperation." She had been the first to see the extraordinary potential of humans, and now the adults recognized it too. Humans could not only survive challenges, they could guide others through them, inspire courage, and create solutions that no calculation could predict. The next morning, the human and alien settlements were quiet but filled with renewed energy. Lyra followed Mark as he checked on the last repairs, spoke to humans quietly, and encouraged aliens who were still cautious to join in small tasks. She noticed subtle changes. The aliens were smiling more, helping each other without strict orders, and even imitating small gestures of human kindness and care. The influence of humans was spreading in ways that were gentle but undeniable. Mark knelt beside Lyra at one point, watching a group of alien children lifting small stones to reinforce pathways. "See how they learn," he said softly. "Not because we force them, but because they see what needs to be done and act. That is what humans do, they inspire. And they can teach anyone, even those who seem cautious or logical, to act with courage and care. That is the power of being human. They could solve problems, inspire others, and transform situations without force or calculation." And for the first time, the aliens acknowledged openly what Lyra had seen all along. Humans were extraordinary. As the twin moons reflected off the lavender fields, the settlement glowed softly under their light. Humans and aliens moved together, working, repairing, and sharing. Lyra stood beside Mark, watching, understanding that this partnership was just the beginning. Humanity had arrived on this distant world not only to survive, but to lead, inspire, and teach in ways that transcended expectation. Mark smiled down at her. "This is only the beginning, Lyra. We can do great things together." "I know," she whispered. "Humans, they are more than we imagined, and you showed me why." The stars began to shimmer above the twin moons, and the lavender fields glowed softly in the night. Lyra held Mark's hand briefly, feeling a deep sense of connection and understanding. Humans had arrived, not with weapons or domination, but with courage, empathy, and a presence that inspired trust and hope. And so the settlement, humans and aliens together, stood as a testament to what one species could teach another. Not through rules, not through force, but through courage, empathy, and the simple, extraordinary act of being human. For Lyra, for the humans, and for the aliens who had begun to understand, the future was bright. Humanity had arrived, and with it, a new hope for unity, understanding, and courage that would reach far beyond this distant world.